Good evening, I'm Alexandra with The Daily Grind. Welcome back to my channel. As I mentioned last week, tonight I will be revealing to you two interviews that I conducted. One was with a former client of Sharon Huddle, JosephJamesDeAngelo's wife, and the other is with a victim of JosephJamesDeAngelo. Before I get to those interviews, I want to update you with the latest in the case. And the latest in the case revolves around a murder that occurred on September 11th, 1975. And the murder was of Claude Snelling. He was a 45-year-old journalism professor near the town of Visalia, and he died quite tragically while he was attempting, or while he did actually save his 16-year-old daughter from being abducted by the alleged Golden State Killer. Claude Snelling was awoken in the middle of the night by some noise in his house. He ran to the kitchen in the family residence, looked out the window, and saw that his 16-year-old daughter was being abducted by an unknown assailant. His daughter's name now is Elizabeth Hupp, and she recalls that she was awoken in the middle of the night by an unknown man wearing a ski mask and pointing a gun at her and forced her out of the family home at gunpoint. She remembers crying and looking back at her family residence and seeing her father peer out the kitchen window. When he spotted her, she heard him scream and charge at her attacker running through the back door of the family residence. This young woman tragically had to witness the murder of her father when the assailant fired 2 gunshots at him. Her father died shortly thereafter on the way to the hospital. But this story is incredibly moving because it documents, the story of a father and his last, final heroic acts of love and compassion for his child. So it's incredibly tragic, and this is the one case that has been reopened, a cold case decades old, by the Tulare County, where Visalia is located, by their police officials. The police officials noted that this is the only case that is currently under investigation with regard to its relation to the Golden State Killer. However, they have not officially charged JosephJamesDeAngelo for this crime. The police are still, filing their report and doing some investigation, and the district attorney informed the public that he will notify them when he decides whether there is sufficient evidence to charge JosephJamesDeAngelo of this crime. He also mentioned that while certain crimes such as burglary and rape and child sex abuse, the statute of limitations has passed, and I will inform you on what the statute of limitations is if you're not aware. But they are reopening these cases because there could be evidence that was accumulated throughout the years and during the investigation when the crimes happened that could link DeAngelo to these crimes and also link him to other murders that occurred throughout Visalia and Tulare County during that time frame. So the statute of limitations is a law that forbids prosecutors from charging someone with a crime after a certain number of years after the crime's occurrence. There was a new law that was passed in 2016, and I believe it was Senate Bill 813, and this bill changed the statute of limitations laws for crimes of rape and child sexual abuse. Unfortunately, however, the law is not retroactive, meaning that crimes that occurred prior to 2016 are still held to the 10-year statute of limitations period. Now I'm going to jump into the portion of tonight's video that is with regard to JosephJamesDeAngelo's victim, and her name is Margaret Wardlow. In my article that I posted, I entitled it 6 Degrees of Separation, a Shocking Revelation for One of DeAngelo's Victims. And the reason I entitled it that is because after DeAngelo's apprehension, Margaret Wardlow, who is the youngest known rape victim of JosephJamesDeAngelo, discovered that her connection with this brutally cold, calculating murderer and rapist did not end with her attack. So I will give you a little bit of background into what happened to Margaret Wardlow if you have not heard, and then I will tell you about what she told me about her her connection to the Sacramento area and the shocking news that she received once Joseph DeAngelo was apprehended. So Margaret Wardlow she's a current San Diego resident, but she grew up in the Sacramento area. And she recalls at a young age being very interested in the case, as I'm sure most people in Sacramento were, because this, criminal was attacking and terrorizing the community and raping and burglarizing homes and then eventually murdering people. So she recalls studying up on the case, reading news articles, watching the television stations and things of that nature. And when she was awoken in the middle of the night in her family residence by an unknown assailant, she knew at the age of 13 years old that she would be his 27th victim. Wardlow used the knowledge that she gleaned through her studies of the case, and she really studied the Golden State Killer's, his psyche, and she didn't play to the fear mentality or victim mentality that he probably wanted her to play to, and that helped her escape this attack and come out on the other side alive. And Margaret Wardlow, as I previously mentioned in my last video, is an extremely intelligent, smart, strong woman, and I believe a role model again to young women and young men who have been in similar circumstances as she did, because she has shown such resilience and strength. So with that said, I want to talk to you about what she told me about her ties and connection to the Golden State Killer in the Sacramento area. So Margaret Wardlow's brother owns a process serving company in Sacramento, and process servers, if you're not aware, are hired by law firms to serve and file documents. So her brother owns his own company and was hired by Sharon Huddle, Joseph DeAngelo's wife, her law firm, to serve and file documents. Both Margaret Wardlow and her brother obviously were not aware that he was employed by her attacker's wife. Margaret Wardlow's connection to the Golden State Killer, however, does not end there. Margaret Wardlow was referred to me by her childhood best friend, who I shall refer to as Jane throughout the duration of this video. Jane happened to be a former client of Sharon Huddle's. Sharon Huddle represented Jane in her divorce in the early 2000s. And Jane told me about her experience as Sharon Huddle's former client, and a lot of what she said did substantiate the claims that have been made online about Sharon Huddle regarding her personality. She belittled staff, berated them, yelled at them. However, she also did the same thing to her clients, and Jane acknowledged that Sharon Huddle did that to her as well. However, she did have some very, very positive things to say, which I informed you I would share with you tonight. Jane noted that once her then husband, now ex-husband, his abusive nature came to light, Sharon Huddle, her representation really went into overdrive. She was an extremely zealous advocate for her. She also called Jane at nights for welfare checks to make sure she was okay. And very, very interestingly, Jane noted that she believed this was an indication that Sharon Huddle had compassion for abused women. Jane also recalled that Sharon Huddle, during their office appointments, would answer personal calls and, talk about personal issues during these consultations and charge Jane for same. However, Jane also acknowledged that a lot of the times Sharon Huddle would answer calls from her daughters, and it was very apparent to her that her daughters and her law practice were the shining beacons in her life and her life's greatest achievements. So that says something, that she was a devoted mother and, devoted to her law practice, and both things were a priority to her, which is admirable. And when I informed Jane that Sharon Huddle was seen in court representing her clients the week after JosephJamesDeAngelo's arrest, Jane informed me that she was not surprised in the slightest due to Sharon Huddle's strong nature and her love and passion for her law firm. In a final and noteworthy statement, Jane opined, "I truly believe Huddle is a strong woman that raised 3 smart daughters with a lot of violence, abuse, control, and anger from DeAngelo. Unless Huddle was complicit and aware of what DeAngelo was doing, I am guessing she is a very abused woman on all levels." Thank you for tuning in tonight. As always, I will continue to keep you updated on this case. If you want blog posts straight to your inbox, please visit my website, www.dailygrindredefined, and you can subscribe on my website. You can also follow me on social media from there. Thank you again for tuning in, and thank you for joining me in this journey and following this case with me. I hope you all have a great night.